There have in fact been 19 British expeditions to Mount Everest. 3 have been successful: Lord Hunt's, Chris Bonington's in 75, and the Army expedition in 76. Let's hope that this one is the 4th. We plan to climb it from the north, the Chinese-Tibet approach.
Colonel Dougie Keelan, expedition leader at the Royal Geographical Society, London.
Before the war.
Can we break into the RAF, the Marines, the Army, and do...
Yeah, right. We're trying to avoid that.
Are you?
Dougie Keelan, Royal Marines, one-time commander of the Falklands garrison, presents to the press his British Services Everest expedition.
That's the reason for that, because you put your names on them.
Can we have the team members, please?
A motley armada of soldiers and sailors, airmen and marines, officers and other ranks, Scotsmen, Welshmen, Englishmen, but no women. They have at least one thing in common: mountain madness. Four months later, we, in the film crew, knew just what mountain madness meant. But what drove these servicemen to volunteer for an expedition that would take them to the limit of human endurance was another matter. It had all started 2 years earlier, booking the mountain with the Chinese authorities, raising sponsorship, choosing the equipment, selecting the 36 expedition members. We joined the team at their first get-together in the Lake District for the official briefing.
Now, we are, of course, a large expedition, and there's no way that I or Henry, the deputy leader, can possibly manage to control the expedition if we're dealing with not only 36 different climbers, but with a TV crew, an artist, and all the other conflicting requirements, unless we split it down into groups. And following the good old infantry principle of building on bricks of 4, we're going to work in those broad teams. You will notice that we've done our best to split the services up, the ranks up, the previous expedition cliques, if you like. Clique is probably the wrong word, but the cliques that might develop because of a bond of previous experience. We've done our best to try and break it down so that instead of having lots of separate little expeditions, we've got one big expedition. And I see the broad phasing of the expedition being, roughly speaking, on these lines. Clearly our trek, the acclimatization period, is phase 1. The next phase, and distinct and separate, will be the move into base camp once the trek is over, and more about that. Then there is the establishment after we've got base camp going, of the advanced base camp further up the glacier, which is another distinct phase, involving obviously the use of quite a lot of yaks. The next phase is the move from the advanced base to get that crucial camp set up on the top of the west shoulder before we move along it. The penultimate phase will be the move along the west shoulder to set up the even more crucial camp at the bottom of the shoulder before we get onto the diagonal ditch to move up the final couloir. And then from there, the final phase very definitely must be the assault itself. Now, I want to now dwell on something which I'm sure it won't be necessary to dwell on ever again during the life of this expedition, and that is the business of casualties. We have all been in the Himalayas before. We have all lost friends in the high hills at one time or another. Murphy's Law, a group this size, statistically does stand to take a casualty or two. You've thought of this, I certainly have, and we're going to just get shot of this subject once and for all now. I believe also I speak for us all when I say that in the event of there being casualties or a casualty, there can be no question of abandoning the expedition. We're here to get to the top, and only in the event of a major disaster would we think of turning back, letting down our sponsors, and so on. I can assure you, an extremely cautious and safe person by nature, and I think most people in this room are as well. It should not happen, but if it does, let us proceed with regret that it's happened, but mindful nonetheless we're there to climb this mountain. Grand, okay, let's pretend that conversation hasn't happened, but it has, and it's in the bottom of our minds, and I believe it's right that we've had it.
It's not getting to the top that's the great thing, it's getting to the top and coming back. And the coming back is wonderful. They're so pleased to see you when they get home. You'll get lots of brownie points for being nice to them and saying off you go with a big smile. Oh, yeah. That's great.
So you wouldn't wish to stop them going?
Oh, no.
Absolutely not, no.
You marry a climber, you marry a
Crazy to do. Yes, you marry a climber, just get on with it.
It's that mountain madness again. And at 18,000 feet, it can affect people in strange ways.
Right. Is that all done there, Baz?
That's it.
Finished all the cooking?
Yeah.
What a splendidly efficient fellow you are. What's the name of that mountain that I'm pointing at now?
Ben Nevis.
Ben Nevis. Next one along? That's Morven Hills.
Tebbit
Next
Peak.
one along?
Tebbit Peak.
Tebbit Peak. And finally, that little one in the background?
Salisbury Hill.
Salisbury Hill. Good. Well done, lads. We're all on good form. The altitude is not affecting us at all.
This is probably the single most expensive item and probably the most important bit of kit we've got. It is to be used high up on the mountain. It's a down-filled suit with a Gore-Tex shell, so it's a complete sort of clothing system in its own right. It's got various features on it. A map pocket or a camera pocket in here. If you like to turn around, Merv. Another fit, just to sort of save you asking the obvious embarrassing question.
On the mountain, bodily functions are no laughing matter. And the higher you get, the more awkward they become. 25,000 feet up at Camp 5, here's expedition star-to-be Merv Middleton with his pee bottle.
There's the old bottle here. Yeah, Merv do not drink. AIDS and a herpes sufferer. All other willies keep away. That there, without that man, it's a killer. Up here, stick your willy outside, it's a goner. It's a lifesaver. The thing is, I hold a litre, and being a small boy, it does take me all night to fill it. So that's the humour, folks. The second item, which has been invaluable, has been the old handkerchief. It's been very, very useful. Bloody hell. And it's a decent item of kit. And I thank Mark on behalf of Granada for giving it me those 3 months ago, and I have kept it quite clean, as you can see.
RAF Bryce Norton, February the 19th, our day of departure. We felt far more apprehensive than the lads as we filmed their final moments in England. Most of them knew at least half of the others, while we were struggling to remember 36 new faces. Dougie Keelan, we knew him. And Ted Atkins, surely he wouldn't wear a straw boater on Everest. And who was this? It wasn't so much the takeoff, but not knowing what lay ahead that gave me that sinking feeling. All but one of the lads had been climbing before in the Himalayas, if not on Everest.
It is, of course, the highest mountain in the world, and because it is just that, inevitably it's going to lure people towards it. Those particular sort of people to whom a challenge of this sort is something that they can't resist. I think if you go around and talk to all the members of this expedition, they see the Big E as the ultimate challenge to strive for. We've catered and coped for all that we reasonably and realistically can, but there's always, to coin a phrase, the fuck-up factor. And you just can't get for that. I hope we'll be successful. I'm confident we will. We're certainly determined enough.
It's just an immense challenge. You've got the wind, you've got the mountain, you've got the conditions, you've got the avalanches, the actual climate itself, and then it's the highest mountain in the world at the end of the day, if you get up the top, hopefully.
I've already topped out my height record by a long, long way on this trip. Before I came here, I'd only ever been at 20,000 feet on Manaslu North, and now I've been to 25,500 feet at Camp 5.
Just going to Tibet is quite something, but it's a big, the highest lump of rock in the world, and that's good enough reason for me.
Who's going to be there on the top?
Well, I certainly hope it will be me, among others, but I'm sure that most of the 36 members also hope it will be them, so we'll have to wait and see.
Oh, I'm elated. I had some hope that I would reach the summit at the start of the trip, but I never thought that I'd be in the first pair to have a good crack, and it's all my dreams come true.
These days of cameras and video and so on and so forth, isn't there something charmingly antiquated about you going along like from the Illustrated London News?
Well, yeah, it's an old tradition, obviously. It's a nice revival of it. I think people nowadays are becoming a little saturated with the photographic image. We're bombarded with it right, left and centre. And as you say, there's something rather charming about having an artist along.
I've got as good a chance as everybody else, and hopefully if I'm going strong at the time, then I'll get the opportunity.
No cold feet then?
Oh no, I'll be going for it.
Well, what you got here is classic superficial frostbite. It's always a bit academic to try and sort of grade it, but as you know, there's no definitive treatment really. I mean, you've got it now, that's it.
Cold feet would be the wrong way to describe it. I would be less than honest if I said I'm not slightly apprehensive about it. I mean, it's a responsibility, isn't it? We have got 52 in fact, in the party, including Lincoln Rowe, our artist, and yourselves. And yes, I'm apprehensive, but I'm confident as well, and I feel that that's a realistic and I hope encouraging way to approach our problem. Warm over, friend. Best of luck.
Good luck.
You've got us all right behind you every moment of the way, and I'm full of confidence this time. Full of confidence. I was last time, but I'm even more full of confidence this time. Anybody can do it. In our gang, you can.
Thanks, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Appreciate having the faith in us.
With you all the way.
I will do justice.
With you all the way.
Thanks, Dougie.
We all are. Best of luck.
Yeah, we know that.
Best of luck. You have our thoughts and our prayers.
Well, we hope we can do that justice.
And as they say, go canny on the hill. Go very canny.
Heard those words before.
Good luck, fellas.
Thanks, I'll do it.
Right, cheers.
Bye, lads.
See you, mate.
See you, boys.
We were to land at Kathmandu in Nepal, where the Gurkha Connection offered a British military expedition a bit of home from home. But our hotel had arranged a very local welcome.
Okay, lads, photograph. Line up underneath the blue sign in front of us.
Ian, our sound man, handed me his recorder in order to join in the spirit of the occasion.
Under the blue.
The British ambassador's residence dates from those days when, as a matter of course, Britain named everything in English, including Everest. The mountain had always had local names, Chomolungma in Tibet and Sagarmatha here in Nepal.
Tuong, sir, who is our Serdar, who has been on the top of Everest before.
Let's hope he gets there a second time.
Yes.
I've been developing a belly. I've been eating for Everest. What are you, 14 stone?
But Kathmandu wasn't all parties. There was all the sorting of kit to be organised. This was the awesome responsibility of Pat Parsons, a far cry from his normal job as head of the Marines' Arctic warfare training.
The really interesting bit has been doing that all and getting it, in the UK and rather like sort of Father Christmas getting all this new stuff. The real pain in the arse has been packing it and humping it around here in Kathmandu, boxing it. I don't want to see another box the rest of my life.
How much is there, actually, altogether?
The whole lot.
Total
Tonnage.
Yeah.
17 tons.
17 tons.
That's everything.
That's food as well.
That is everything. Yeah. But on a sort of an average basis, it's no more than any other expedition on a sort of weight per man, if you like. We're not particularly heavy. The only reason it sounds heavy is because we've got a big team. So, you know, next week sometime, there's going to be 500 lucky porters humping all of this gear across the road at Lamasangme. I hope they make it.
This very, very good suit. Only for wind. Not for insulation. That's a zips. It'd be like a punk rocker.
As we were going to Tibet, the expedition was taking only 6 high-altitude Sherpa porters from Nepal. They still had to be kitted out, but Nepalis tend to take small sizes.
A little bit big. I lend you some scissors. But look, hang on. What you Hackbert, this is, you can use it as a jacket. Okay, so look what we do. Come here. Tie your legs together in a nice big knot. Pull it up, and then tuck these inside. You see?
Yeah.
That's a good jacket. Windproof jacket.
Yeah.
So that's okay.
Between all the sorting and the packing, the briefings and the official excursions, there was time to be tourists, and Kathmandu has plenty to offer. This is the Monkey Temple. Andy Hughes, one of the 3 doctors, obviously knew the rules. Like every good Buddhist, he did it clockwise.
मान्छेले सबै ज्ञान भास्कर गर्न गहनहरू अगाडि भिडाउन भएर यसमा
Nigel, Dave and Johnny, here making last-minute purchases in the bazaar, were destined to be selected for a summit attempt 3 months later. But here in warm and sunny Kathmandu in February, it was difficult to make that mental leap to the icy slopes of Everest in May. In Bhaktapur, the old capital of Nepal, Luke Hughes, in the very British attire and not to be confused with Andy Hughes, took Pat, Keith and Lincoln to see a bit of local culture.
So what's interesting though, the men all look like women, you notice that?
Yeah. Yeah, and the women don't look like women. They haven't got any lumps. Well, she's got one. Oh, you can only see one of her lumps. Yeah, the other one's covered by.
As well as being a mountaineer and a part-time soldier in the territorials, Luke is a cabinet maker and furniture designer of some repute. So a bit of wood carving was just up his street.
Yeah, but the quality in this is so much better. I haven't seen anyone actually making that stuff.
Well, that's what we're going to be going to have a look at.
The lizards running down the sides there. Look.
Yeah. It's the last bit of serious pornography we're going to see before we get off the mountain.
But you'll be dreaming about this at camp.
Look at this girl.
That's not a girl, it's a dog.
Maybe doggy fashion.
It puts a new meaning on the phrase doggy fashion.
It's all carved from personal experience for you.
I wonder what's going through this guy's brain all day, carving out various bits.
He's on the naughty bits at the moment.
It looks very painful, that chisel. You've got to be a bit careful with that.
Those 3.
Martin Bazier was in charge of the food, and he looked like Basil Fawlty, so everyone called him Baz. He aimed to give us fresh vegetables while they lasted. After that, it would be compo or tinned rations. In a month or so, anything fresh would be a mouth-watering prospect. Before we left Kathmandu, I wanted a closer look at Everest for the film. So did Dougie for the expedition.
I hope you didn't have a late night. And you've got a clear head. And you'll drive us very straight, without bumps. It's looking good there, isn't it? Forecast. I think Mark's probably told you that even if we can't get all the way to Everest, he's still very keen to to go, or at least somewhere, just to get
No,
up.
no, we will see how it is, don't worry.
Yeah.
Today, at least, I can protect from here.
Yes, yeah. Oh,
we will see.
That's excellent, yeah. Oh, it's quite exciting. We're going to be off at last, aren't we?
Last.
Yeah.
Third time lucky.
Yes.
The door going to stay on now? You were saying yesterday the door
No,
fell off one day.
that's long back. That's,
It's being mended a bit.
Oh, yeah.
Glad to hear that.
What time are you planning to get off?
Today?
No, yeah.
Yeah. Another 5 minutes.
Another 5
Let's
minutes.
jump
maybe.
in and we
Yes.
go.
Yeah. Let's go for it, shall we?
What a fight this is.
For Dougie, this was familiar territory. He had been on the southern side of Everest in a 1976 expedition. His enthusiasm almost convinced me.
What a whizzing day it is, isn't it? Dramatic. Well, she's hidden away behind that ridge at the moment. But she'll appear again. She is dramatically higher than her surroundings. It'll be cold though, it'll be mighty cold out there. Still the end of the winter perhaps, so temperatures will be minus 35 centigrade, I would think. This is exciting. It's a very clear day, really. There's a tiny plume of snow to the side of it, blowing off the top of Everest. Our route, of course, is up the western skyline, as you can see at the moment. In fact, slightly behind it, where the Hornbeam couloir is concealed from view. This very prominent west ridge we can see, along which we'll be traversing, looks quite short and easy here. In fact, it's well over a mile long, probably near a mile and a half. One has little idea of the scale.
Down there, we'd be spending weeks and months, while the lads pitted their strength against the highest mountain in the world.
Joined the expedition and the results in a 6-part series called On the Big Hill, which began last night. The cameras were in there right from the start.
Clearly our trek, the acclimatization period, is phase 1. The next phase, and distinct and separate, will be the move into base camp once the trek is over, and more about that. Then there is the establishment after we've got base camp going, of the advanced base camp further up the glacier, which is another distinct phase, involving obviously the use of quite a lot of yaks. The next phase is the move from the advanced base to get that crucial camp set up on the top of the west shoulder before we move along it. The penultimate phase will be the move along the west shoulder to set up the even more crucial camp at the bottom of the shoulder before we get onto the diagonal ditch to move up the final couloir. And then from there, the final phase very definitely must be the assault itself.
And that was Royal Marine Colonel Dougie Keelan, who led the expedition, and he's with us together with half of the TV crew. Brave TV crew, it must be said. Producer Mark Anderson and cameraman Nick Plowright. Let me start with you, Mark. We didn't actually see that much climbing last night, did we? So what did you set out to do? It was more, in a way, a story about behind the scenes and the men themselves, it seemed to me.
I think that's really the idea of the whole series, and it is a series. I mean, there are 6 programmes, so almost by definition you couldn't have that much climbing on Everest in the first programme.
Right.
There was a taster of it, and there's a lot more to come.
Right. And you never, either of you, let's get this clear, neither of you'd ever gone mountaineering before?
Certainly not. No, I don't even ski. Nick skis.
So why were you ski? Yes. Well, that's something. You've seen a bit of snow.
I'd been to, what, 10,000 feet before.
Really?
But,
and so when you were asked to do it, were you asked to do it, or was it your idea?
No, I was asked.
And did you have the slightest clue that it was going to be as it was when you were asked, standing here in sunny Manchester?
I thought it was going to be hard, but no, you couldn't hope to be prepared for what it actually ended up being like. I mean, it was...
Is there a word to sum up the experience?
Chance of a lifetime for me.
Yeah?
Yeah,
not everything else. I mean, filming in the streets of London after this is going to seem a real letdown, isn't it?
Oh, no. Very pleasant change, actually.
How did they do as climbers?
Well, I think they did very well. I must admit, I was a little in anticipation, apprehensive perhaps, when I was told that we were going to have a Granada film crew, and I was told it was going to be a warts and all programme. But well, I suppose we fenced around each other, the film crew and ourselves, at the beginning, and getting to know each other, finding out what our requirements were. And I think I can speak for all the climbers and say, well, the 4 of Mark's team are now firm friends. And it was always going to be not a film about climbing Mount Everest, but a film about people climbing Mount Everest, and we're people.
So you actually ended up smiling. I noticed when you came in the makeup room today, you actually were pleased to see each other. I thought that's something after all the things you went through together.
Oh, yes.
Let's take some calls, because we've got quite a few people who want to ask you questions. Okay. We have Paul Monkton from Leicester. Hello, Paul.
Hello.
Hello, Paul. How old are you?
13.
13. Now, did you sit riveted watching this last night, or what? Did you like it?
Yeah, I thought it was quite good.
Quite good?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Fine. So what would you like to say about it? Why was it quite good?
I liked it, but I'd like to ask them what made them go up, and did they ever think of turning back?
Right. Who shall we ask that of? I think you first, because you were the expedition leader. It didn't look to me like you were going to turn back at any point.
Well, Paul, it's not an easy question to answer, that one, because why does anybody go out and risk their neck and be uncomfortable for 4 months like that? And I suppose people do it for different reasons. Some do it because there's a driving, compelling inner ambition. Others do it for a whole host of different reasons. And I'm not nearly wise enough to summarize it, but I would say this, that to those that do not understand, no explanation is really possible, but to those that do understand, no explanation is necessary.
Paul, do you fancy it yourself? Would you do it if you had the chance?
It depends. If we were going for a record, yeah, I would.
But not just for the sake of it?
Well, it depends how I was in the sport, how much I was deeply in it.
Yeah. Now, Paul, you say it was quite good. Was there something in it that you were a bit disappointed about, or that you wished you'd seen more of so far?
I know, I only seen a bit of it. I've seen the first about half of it, but I thought it was quite good from there.
Right.
I didn't see it, so I can't comment on that.
Right, are you going to watch the others, Paul?
Yeah.
Right, shall I ask the camera crew why they went? It's a good question. Why did you go, isn't it? Out of the mouths of youngsters.
Well, we went because we were asked to go to make the programme, but
surely work's not that difficult.
We went to try and make this film about people and find out about what motivated these people to actually climb mountains and be in these sort of terrible conditions that we suffered for 3 months. And as Dougie rightly said, I mean, I think you'll hear later in the series that somebody actually does say at some stage that you don't need to ask that question to a mountaineer, because if you are a mountaineer, you know why you do it.
And it also keeps it very mysterious from the rest of us, doesn't it?
It does, absolutely, yes.
Well,
I think to this day we never really found out why.
We've got Jane Snape from Nottingham on the line. Hello, Jane.
Hello.
What was your view of this programme?
Well, I just loved it. I love anything to do with the Himalayas and the people out there, and I've read many books on other climbers.
Right.
And I just, my question would be that are the Sherpas and Tibetans and all the helpers as they were? Are they spoilt now, or are they sort of blasé about what they, you know, I mean, they've had lots of climbers, haven't they, and lots of teams and
Dougie, this is a good question. How much have you affected their natural lifestyle?
There's a lot of studies going on at the moment, Jane, about the effect of Western civilization and the trekking communities that move out to those beautiful and high mountains, and the pollution they cause and the change of lifestyles and so on, that are an inevitable consequence. And I'm not wise enough to know all the answers. What I would say this is we had 6 Sherpas, only 6 Sherpas as our high-altitude porters this time. Expeditions traditionally have many more, but we were, because we were a large group, doing it ourselves. I would say that, firstly, that they haven't changed in substance at all. Provided you look after them and you make them feel part of the team, you equip them properly, and they feel confident in you, they will serve you as they always have done. And they are a wonderful group.
Mark, what was your impression? You'd never met them before, presumably?
No, I'd never come across Sherpas, never come across Nepalese and...
Or mountains, to
say
that.
Or mountains, indeed, no. My first reaction was that the Nepalese were wonderful people. I mean, they're always laughing, they're smiling. When anything goes wrong, they make a joke about it. They were great people to have around, and the Sherpas would come up and just talk. Some of them didn't even speak very good English, but they'd come and stand and ask you a question and then just smile while you talked.
OK, Roma, thanks for that call. I gather Natalie's getting quite a few coming in. Natalie, what have you got over there? Natalie?
Oh, that's right, Patty. We've actually had a call from Lynn Brooks, who's rung in. It's a technical question first, and then a mountaineering one. Lynn Brooks has rung in to say, do the cameramen, when they're making films like this, use ordinary film cameras at 25,000 feet instead of a video camera? And the other one is about mountaineering from Philip Lucas from Manchester, who he says he wants to start learning to climb mountains, but at 30, is he too old to learn?
Right, I think let's get the camera one out of the way, Nick. What special cameras at all? Problems with cameras?
Well, the cameras we used, by and large, were the sort of cameras that we use day in, day out in normal television program production. We wanted to get pictures back from very, very high up the mountain, and I think at a very early stage we decided that I certainly wasn't capable of doing that, so we decided that some of the Video 8 home movie cameras, which I'm sure you've all seen in the shops, were the ones to use.
Really?
Yeah.
And that's what the stuff that went out?
So
it is actually now transmittable, TV transmittable quality, is it, that these things that people can use at home?
We got a film camera that we would normally use to 25,000 feet. Above that, everything was done on home movie Video 8 cameras.
That's incredible, isn't it?
And it was...
And by the climbers.
Yeah, by the climbers.
Yes?
Sometimes with some reluctance, I might, because every ounce counts at those altitudes.
Absolutely.
Now, the other question we heard there from Natalie was this gentleman said he's 30. Is he too old to start climbing?
Oh, never too old. Never too old. Go for it.
That's a good one. All right, who have we got on the line? Peter Willett from Mould in North Wales. Hello, Peter.
Good morning, Patty.
I'm on the wrong camera. There you are. What's your question, Peter?
I've got a couple of points, one to Mark and one to Mick. Whilst I found the programme overall enjoyable, I do find it confusing when producers or directors, whoever, are responsible for moving around in the chronological order. Particularly last night, I felt that inserting someone with frostbite on his toes in the middle of the expedition getting ready in London or in Kathmandu, very confusing. And there were other instances where, in particular, one of the expedition who was saying that he'd been selected for the final assault, and they were still sort of packing up stuff in
England. Yes.
England.
All right. Now let's ask. It was your decision in the end.
It was,
wasn't it?
yes. I plead absolutely guilty to that, Peter. It's my justification would be that the beginning stages of this expedition took quite a long time to get going. It was a week in Kathmandu getting everything, all the gear sorted and so on and so forth. And I felt that, and perhaps I was wrong, that people would want to see a bit of a taster of what was actually going to be happening on the mountain in the future. And perhaps it was a misjudgment, but I know other people have told me that they liked to jump ahead like that and to see,
yes,
to
I
get a
think
feel of
it's a question
what was
of
coming
taste,
up.
yeah. It was fairly obvious he wasn't sitting at home when he was sitting there with his toes frostbitten, wasn't it? Now, let me ask you, Mark, I mean, sorry, Nick, you do all the filming.
Yeah.
It comes home, presumably you watch what they call the rushes. You
Not
watch
always.
as many as you can,
Yes.
because you're out on another job, and it's sort of taken out of your hands then.
Yes.
When you watch it, the final one, do you ever feel frustrated? Because you must have ideas about the order it should go in.
I don't think on this occasion, no. I think one of the problems Mark had to deal with has been time. I mean, there's been so much information in these two.
Presumably you could have done 12 programmes.
24 minutes. Yes,
right.
we could have done 12 programmes.
Yeah.
But no, I don't feel frustrated at all. That's my role. My job finishes when we get back. I've done my bit, and over to him. You know, that's it. So no, I don't think I feel frustrated.
Thank you. We've got Janet Armstrong in Bristol. Hello, Janet.
Morning, Patsy.
What did you think about this programme?
Oh, I thought it was super. Really enjoyed it and really looking forward to the next episode next week.
Yeah.
But my sort of question was on the cost of it all. I was wondering how difficult is it to get sponsorship for something like this, because with all those people going out there, there must have been a tremendous amount of money needed.
Well, Janet, you've opened up a real Pandora's box there, because the first thing, in case there's any misapprehension that I must say, is that although we were a services expedition, there's no public taxpayers' money directly involved. We were retained, you'll be pleased to hear, as a fellow taxpayer, Patty. We were certainly retained on the payroll, and we got what they call on-duty status, but the rest of it had to be raised commercially. And that thankless task fell to me very largely. And we went out into the marketplace and did our best.
So who gave you the money?
Well, a number of sponsors. The main ones were Kerr-McGee Oil. There was also British Telecom. There were a computer firm called Commodore.
And how much did they give you altogether?
Well, in the end, the whole thing cost, let's say, just over 200,000.
Is that all?
That is all. Yeah.
To take 50-odd people?
To take 52
for how many
people
months?
For nearly 4 months. Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm sorry I gave them such a plug. I think they're a bit tight with you there. I thought you were going to say million.
There's still an overdraft. Is there
really?
So I'm going around with my cap after this, please.
Well, you got that in. All right, whilst we're on the subject of plugs, but I do think this is a worthwhile one. It's you've written this book, haven't you, On the Big Hill. I think anybody who did enjoy it, it's only fair to tell them about this, because it's from the point of view of a non-climber, isn't it?
Well, that was the idea. I mean, it's absolutely not an official account, and I have to say this with Dougie here, it doesn't pretend to be, but an account of the climb from an official point of view. It's what it's like for an average bloke who smokes cigarettes, likes a good drink.
And do you?
Yes.
You're a smoker as well?
Yes.
Did you have
Nick
to give...
and I smoke, yeah.
Did you have to give that up?
Yeah.
No, I thought I was going to give up, actually. I thought it'd be my big opportunity to give up. In fact, I must have smoked more up there than I think ever in my life.
Mainly mine.
Yeah, mainly
yours. And you've not given up since?
No. There's nothing more relaxing than waking up at 4 in the morning in the middle of a storm and having a cigarette at night.
We've had a call here from Mrs. Burr, and her maiden name was Everest. And she said she's delighted to find out. What are you laughing at, Eamon?
She's in double glazing, isn't she?
She's in double glazing, he's just said. You're very witty this morning, Eamon. Shut up. Delighted to find out that her maiden name meant the goddess of the world. Is that right?
Yes.
Everest.
It's in the Tibetan name. Chomolungma, which is the Tibetan name of Everest, means goddess, mother of Everest.
Mother goddess of the
Something
world.
like that.
It's funny, this thing about names, because I was watching this programme with my little friend, my favourite little 5-year-old, Laura Buchan, and another girlfriend, 3 girls together, and she was absolutely mesmerised, a 5-year-old girl. She didn't know about Everest, and I said, this is about the highest mountain in the world, Laura. It's called Everest. And she said, is that because you can't ever rest?
Well, she has a point. She has a good point.
And I just thought, what a brilliant remark. I mean, has that little girl got a point there?
Oh, indeed she has, yes. I mean, Everest, the name Everest, of course, was after Sir George Everest, who was one of the early surveyors generals in India. And, but her point is well made, because it is an uncomfortable business. The sheer existence at high altitude is pain. I don't know why we do it.
Isn't that funny? A little 5-year-old saying that. It was really sweet. We've got time for one more call. Roma Mulvey from London. Hello, Roma.
Oh, good morning, Patty.
Morning.
I'm afraid I didn't watch the programme last night. And my question was really born really this morning, during this morning's edition of Open Air. And it concerns rubbish. There was a large contingent on the expedition of 52 people and their yaks and all the rest of the paraphernalia for 4 months on Everest. Earlier on this year, there was an expedition by young people who funded themselves to go out and clear up the rubbish that had been left by expeditions on Everest since expeditions first started going up there. And I was wondering, what did the expedition do with their day-to-day rubbish?
Well, it's a problem, this, and always will be, however careful you are. As much as we could, we buried down deep crevasses on the hill, and so that whatever happened, it was going to get covered and destroyed and consumed by the glaciers over the centuries that will follow. A lot of it, of course, we couldn't dispose of in that way, and we burnt it and buried it. And a lot we carried out with us when we
So
left.
you were very conscious?
We were very conscious. But the problem is, and I must add, we're on the north side, and the expedition that you refer to collect all the rubbish was on the south side. The problem is that you bury it all, you put huge great rocks over the pile, and then the locals will come up, pull the rocks off, and throw it everywhere, and you get the blame.
But you were at least trying, you were aware of...
I can assure anybody we did our level best.
Well, I thought for a minute that she was going to say that the programme was rubbish, but I have to say that we haven't had a single call to say that. I know there's going to be lots of people tuning into the next 5 episodes, and I won't tell you what happens at the end. Thank you very much indeed to all of you for coming in. Well done.
Thank you.
Natalie.
Smith.
On Thames, Everest awaits on the Big Hill.
Trekking in Nepal is becoming a popular upmarket holiday, but the 4,000-foot-a-day climb that Dougie Keelan has in store for his men is no gentle jaunt.
You must be getting fitter. Less pain than before.
Before they even reach the mountain, there will be 2 casualties amongst Keelan's would-be Everest conquerors.
The gang are getting all the kit stowed onto the Gurkha lorry, as you can see, and they won't see this stuff again until it gets to the base camp in Tibet, which will be probably about the 8th of March, that sort of time. So what people have been doing is repacking, sorting out all this kit, the 17 tons of it, into portaloads, keeping enough back for the treks, and leaving things like smart suits and more civilized clothing back here in Kathmandu for when we return.
Look, I snore all night, and that's as much as I get. Sorry?
For the trek, the Get Fit first leg of the expedition proper, leader Dougie Keelan has decided to split his 36-man team into 2 groups. The first is leaving Kathmandu today, February the 24th. It will be 3 months before anyone takes another shower or sits on a proper loo.
Actually, I think you'll have fun. I think you'll have enormous fun. And as I said to Seb yesterday, please don't leave a great trail of turds that you've got to follow along.
One well-needed cup of coffee for the leader. Dougie asked us in the film crew to join him on the second group, trekking in the foothills of the Himalayas, before crossing the border into Tibet and making for Mount Everest.
It should be quite fun, this trek, and it's coming at a good psychological moment, I think, to move out of Kathmandu now. Everybody's done all that can be done. We're all keyed up. We've peaked on our enthusiasm at about the right point. And it does seem to me that we're leaving not a moment too late.
By any standards, this is a major expedition, and for Dougie Keelan, a lonely responsibility.
I've got a lot on my mind at the moment, obviously. I'm thinking ahead, I'm evaluating things. I have to think about people and how they're getting on and how they're faring. Are they well? Are they fit? Are they bothered? Are they fitting in? How do we use their talents best, their advantages into the expedition's advantage, and so on. And so inevitably that does occupy my thoughts a bit.
Back in England, I had been warned about acute mountain sickness, a real risk if you go too high too fast. It can be fatal. The body needs to get accustomed gradually to the lack of oxygen at altitude, and walking is the ideal speed at which to do it. It was quite quick enough for me.
The purpose of the trek really is to get the team fit. Because as you know, we're a bit sort of soft at the moment, so we've got to get used to living in the country like this. And ultimately, to get a bit of altitude. Later on in the trek, we're going to start getting up high enough to feel the altitude, and to be able to start acclimatizing properly. Either taking tablets or just naturally, or, you know, whatever way. So by the time we come to Tibet, we're going to be much better prepared, sort of physically and psychologically, for the mountain. So the trek is a really crucial part of the whole climb. I mean, you couldn't go in just cold, if you like.
Terry, can I just turn to you, and can you just tell us what we've actually gained today, what altitude we'd gained, and perhaps relate it to some well-known mountain or something in England?
We've gained about 2,500 feet, which is the average height of most peaks in England anyway.
We've gained a bit more than that. We've gained about 4,000 feet.
But Scawfell Pike's only 3,200 feet, so we've done that and a bit plus. So it's quite a long way.
Mm. How are you coping? You said you turn your mind off. Do you not think about things when you're trudging up?
Well, I try not to. I try not to. It's probably a lack of imagination or something. I'm just thinking about how much further I've got to go before the next cigarette stop.
You and I are more or less the only smokers, I think. And one or two others. Is that a hindrance?
We'll burn everyone else off. Don't worry about that. No problem.
Being a major in the Gurkhas, Kit might be confident, but I wasn't. And after today's little stroll, I wanted to know why anyone went mountain climbing at all.
It's a good question, and it's one that you can't really answer unless you're a mountaineer. And if you are a mountaineer, you don't need to ask it anyway, because everybody understands it. You know, life in the sort of humdrum way that it is in the UK is fine, but you've got to have some sort of challenge in life so you can fulfill yourself. And a mountaineer fulfills himself initially on small peaks, which seem big at the time, but then as you sort of get more experienced and proficient, so you raise your sights. And I suppose the ultimate sight for a mountaineer has got to be Everest. Now, I always think that the harder the climb, the bigger the buzz that you get out of it. So if we crack Everest, we're going to be buzzing for the rest of our lives. It'll be brilliant.
The Nepalese porters were a luxury we would have to do without in Tibet. But Chong, the Sherpa boss, was coming with us, together with 9 other Sherpas, 5 of them high-altitude porters, and 4 cooks. Trekking in Nepal may be hard, but climbing Everest is downright dangerous. Cold statistics predict the death of 1 climber in 10. On this expedition, that's 3.5 men. Luke Hughes, in the baggy shorts and trilby, is a furniture designer as well as a mountaineer, and a practical rather than a superstitious man.
Everybody's got some kind of spiritual token with them. I mean, I know I've got a little thing from the Dalai Lama that I had blessed some years ago. Dougie's got a St. Christopher that was given to him by his wife before he came away, and I'm sure you'll find that everybody else has got some little token whereby they know they're going into an area where it is very dangerous, and the dangers are very objective. Strange things happen, and they're aware of it. Puff, puff.
Thanks to Martin Bazier's bulk buying in Kathmandu's vegetable market and the skills of the Sherpa cooks, we ate well on the trek. On Everest, there would be precious little fresh food, but the ketchup would last forever.
Where's the tomato sauce?
Here. There.
Oh, sorry. Cabbage.
Have you not had an omelette yet?
No.
Makes you out look like a plane.
Oh, look at those mountains.
What are you going to do?
Andy Hughes, one of the doctors, never missed an opportunity to practice his Nepalese. Here, with Kami, the poor lad whose job it was to carry my large rucksack, while I was struggling even with a smaller one.
Pine, sir? Pine. Pine. Raxi China.
Nothing.
Oh, very bad.
Come on, Dad. You're recovering that bit of tape from halfway down the cliff, and you...
Leap Day, February the 29th, was an extra day I could have done without. We had trudged a good 12 miles, climbed to well over 10,000 feet, and hit the snow line. For the next 3 months, every drink would start out looking like this. The air was noticeably thinner, it was cold, and I had no idea where we were. So I turned to the leader. Where have we actually come from? We stopped down there, didn't we?
Yeah. Last night, we were behind the main peak, which I'm pointing out with my pipe. To the left, you've got a subsidiary peak. Go left again, and you've got another peak. And we were between the two, somewhere in there. It's quite difficult to see exactly where in this haze, but it was in about that area. And we've come round the back of many of these bumps. Bumps is probably a misnomer because we've discovered from the sweat on our brow, some of them are quite big. But we've been over many of them and round others. And I think by any standards today has been a good, demanding trekking day. I'm quite pleased, actually.
That's all right for you.
Water's a problem, it always is. But there's enough fresh snow from last night's storm to melt and the cooks to use as they see fit. So morale is getting better, as you can see. People have put on their thermal undies for the first time, and I suspect it's going to be quite chilly tonight.
The next morning, Pat Parsons walked into Charlie Hattersley's ice axe. He needed a film crew, like a hole in the leg.
Am I allowed to tell you to off?
Do you want more tea, Pat?
No.
Anyone not heard of Shocky Bicky?
Yeah. Come on, scab lifter. Hattersley, you can stand by. You can stand by to lose your
Could you just look up
eyesight.
page 32, mate?
Read out a few directions.
Stitching legs.
I don't want to shave, I'm trying to grow a beard.
Well, you hooked onto the axe, did it?
Just brushed past the rucksack and they went right in.
Yeah, well...
Cool, no local, mate, eh?
Well, if this is the only problem I get,
Fighting
I'll be
bar?
quite happy.
Do you want some more water, Annie? throbbing there.
He'll get
No.
delayed reaction. Emergency ward 10, isn't it?
In the event, Pat's leg wasn't that bad. Weeks later, he would willingly have settled for a few stitches rather than what he did suffer.
Hi. Hello there. What have you? Hey. Right on your block.
Some porters never wear boots. This one lived to regret it. By the evening, he had developed frostbite and hobbled through the rest of the trek with his feet bandaged up by Andy Hughes.
Comes the old cripple. No, I think that's it.
I've never been on one of these jobs, and
Well, they was in the
Yeah, has that spoon gone everywhere with it? Does it have some problems?
This was the highest camp on the trek, around 14,000 feet, but still less than half the height of Everest.
Spot the retard with the boater.
Last again, as usual.
Solar Walkman on charge.
Last again, as usual.
From here to the Nepalese border, it was downhill all the way, supposedly a lot easier. But it was devastatingly steep and treacherous. Coldstream Guardsman, and when he's not mountaineering, man about town Giles Gittings, was rash enough to cock a snoot at his fellow climbers.
A couple of people who remain nameless had to hand their packs over to porters, but on the whole, I think most people needed the sort of burnout to sort of get rid of home and just get back out in the hills and just get walking.
That wasn't you. Why can't you name them? Come on, there's no secrets in this.
No, I don't. No, they'll probably get interviewed later.
Ted Atkinson.
Ted Atkins for one. No.
And I thought, well, it couldn't really do any harm to have a big, heavy pack, because the idea is to train, acclimatise for the walk in. So I just lashed everything on, just kept putting stuff in until I wouldn't take any more. But what happened was, at the end of a particularly long day, my legs started aching, the joints at the tops of my legs. Rather than injure myself, I just handed my pack over to a porter for the day and paid him.
You don't want to damage yourself at this stage of the game, so if you want to get onto the hill. That's the trouble with coming downhill. Carrying a heavy pack, don't want to fall over, twist an ankle, turn a knee, when you've got a chance to climb Everest in a couple of weeks' time. The last thing you want to do is injure yourself at this early stage.
Well, Giles spoke too soon. We were already down on the road when we heard he'd had an accident.
Well, we got a problem in that word has been passed down the mountain via a note by hand of a fast-moving Sherpa that Giles Gittings, who you may remember fell over this morning on one of the tricky bits, has had his foot get rather worse than we'd thought. The doctor looked at it earlier and thought it was probably just a sprain. It seems to be perhaps a little more than that, and he certainly can't walk on it. So we have a problem.
The doctor who had looked at Giles's ankle was Al Miller.
What does it say, Al?
This says Giles has possible break in tibia. Please send painkillers ASP with convict.
Yeah, which is what we're going to do anyway. Yeah.
We must buy one basket.
You want a basket to carry him?
For carry.
Yes.
In there it's impossible. It's a stretcher, you know.
Yes. No, there's no way you'll use a stretcher.
From basket is very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Push this button. Push. Yeah, push.
Let's go. Very good.
While the two Sherpas climbed back up to fetch Giles, Al Miller worried about his diagnosis, and Dougie pondered on the implications of it all. Five hours later, Gombu and Gopal staggered into our camp with the 15-stone Giles in a basket. Taking it in turns to carry him, they had negotiated over 2,000 feet of precipitous descent.
I'll be up there for next week. No stick. No stick about?
They're just like the Indians, really, aren't they?
Get into that
You
beer,
just can't. You just
again, mate? Get into that beer. Yeah, I can't believe it. Yesterday, I said to the cameras, you don't want to do a knee or an ankle.
I know.
Yeah.
Right, looks all right to me, John.